If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We are back. The Saints Block Party podcast brought to you by Precious Works LLC. For any business website needs, reach out to our guy, Bajan. And we are ecstatic to be recording this episode right now. We didn't think he'd be back on so soon, but he's back. Matt Harmon himself of Yahoo Sports, of Reception Perception. We have Saints and wide receiver things to talk about, and it makes me like
we did it.
We did it. We did it. If you have been living under a rock, in the draft a couple of weeks ago, the Saints added Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver from Arizona State, at pick 8. Then they came back in round 4 and added another wide receiver in Bryce from North Dakota State. And then in the later rounds, they added Barian Brown, who's more of a return specialist. So they added legitimately 3 wide receivers in the 2026 NFL draft. But I tell you, Ryan and I were floating in New Orleans. We were floating in New Orleans when this happened. And like, I know we're focused on wide receivers, but it's still kind of part of the whole equation that they added Oscar Depp, a tight end, in round 3. We are seeing truly, like, Kellen Moore is really building the offense and his vision and what he wants to see. Matt, thank you for coming and joining us so soon. Let's just dive into it, man. Like, first initial thoughts when you saw the Jordyn Tyson pick at 8, because I just remember being at Indy, having a conversation with you in the lobby. I was like, man, I think they really like Jordyn Tyson. Like, I think they like him. And then when you were on our episode a couple of weeks before the draft, I said, I would think if they went the wide receiver route, it was between going to be Lemon and Tyson. Like, I didn't think Darnell Tate was going to be in that equation, and it didn't matter because he went 4 overall. But just your initial immediate reaction when that pick was made.
Yeah, thought this was great news for Jordyn Tyson specifically, because there were a lot of landing spots where I would have been a little bit nervous about his deployment. You know, it's always tough when you're, and this is why I love doing the post-draft analysis almost more than the pre-draft, because pre-draft you're working in theories, you're trying to project for all 32 teams. And so when you sit down and you rank these guys going into the draft, you do have to account for like some level of risk if they just go to, and not when I'm talking about landing spot, like, oh, they're with a bad quarterback or there's not that many targets available. I think there's a lot of guys who just get doomed because of the scheme that they fall into and kind of what ends up being like they just get misevaluated as players. I always come back to a guy in Traylon Burks, who I was lower than consensus on going into his NFL draft 2022. Don't take this as a victory lap because I was higher than consensus on Jahan Dotson, and that didn't age well either. So, I'm just saying. But with Burks was tough because I thought there was a path forward for him, but the thing that could not happen to him was that a team would look at him and say, okay, he's like 6'2 plus, 220 pounds plus. He's going to be our X receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened with the Tennessee Titans. They took him to replace a guy in A.J. Brown who he drew a lot of pre-draft comparisons to A.J. Brown, literally because their dimensions were the same. And that's it. I'm like, well, he don't play anything like A.J. Brown. He
Not at all.
Profile. Yeah. So what are we doing here? And I'm always worried about certain particular guys going into the draft, falling into one of those spots. Tyson was one of those guys, now a better prospect than Burks, in my opinion, and didn't have necessarily some of the same red flags, but I did think there was a risk of some team looking at him at 6'2", over 200 pounds, and the really twitchy movements that he has within his route running, and seeing him as an X receiver, as a guy that you're going to stick on the perimeter, on ball, and let him go against top corners, against press man coverage. And I think that there are weaknesses in Tyson's game when he's going against press coverage. I mean, his success rate versus press and reception perception is not very good relative to some of the other prospects that went high in the draft. That being said, he is the number one zone beater in the class among the players charted this year. And it's not even just number one in success rate versus zone coverage in this class. It's a top 5 mark since 2021 among Power 5 receivers that and I know Power 5, the conferences are all weird now, but you generally get the gist I'm going for here. Among since the 21 draft class, he's top 5 in that metric. He's up there with guys like Garrett Wilson, guys like Drake London. Travis Hunter obviously was in this regard, even though he's, a part-time receiver, part-time corner. When he was playing receiver, he was a great zone beater. And then there is the aforementioned Jahan Dotson in there. So, it's not a full guarantee, but it's a pretty good, impressive mark for him to be up there, especially when you consider some of the other parts of his profile. So when I see a guy like that going to the draft, I am just like, okay, it's going to take the right fit. It's going to take the right scheme. I think it's going to take somewhere that sees him more as a movement Z receiver than an X receiver. And I'm thinking that's probably going to be what he plays in this Saints offense, because Kellen Moore, and I think we talked about this in relation to had they gone with Mekhi Lemon at the 8th overall pick, they were so good at moving guys around the formation last year. Nobody in this wide receiver room took more than 65% of their snaps out wide last year. Chris Olave, the number one receiver, was 61% snaps out wide. So I think they're going to keep a lot of those principles, because a lot of it comes from the fact that they were number one in pre-snap motion percentage on their dropbacks. And that's going to afford Jordyn Tyson a lot of these free releases, getting him moving around, going against zone coverage, as opposed to some of that perimeter X receiver stuff. So my first thought was, this is pretty good news for Jordyn Tyson. And he's going to be a guy that when you're talking about projecting his NFL career, I think he's a guy that's a post-draft riser in the rankings, as opposed to what might have happened had he gone to a different landing spot.
Yeah, man, it's really fascinating. Just him as a prospect. Me and Adam, we did a film study on him. He was the first prospect me and him studied, did the all 22, where we dove deep into him. And, there were a lot of things we liked, and there was a lot of things that we just was kind of on. Obviously, the injury stuff scared the shit out of both of us, just frightened us. But interestingly, as you dig deeper, maybe it's just because we drafted him and you start to try to kind of come up with excuses.
Sure.
But it's when you look at the context of it, okay, he had the ACL at Colorado. It wasn't like he just walked wrong and got the ACL. He got harpooned from behind from a defender and towards ACL. In fact, his dad made the point to tell Luke Johnson, who covers the Saints, to tell him that it was just the ACL. It wasn't the ACL, PCL, MCL that's been reported or whatever. So he had that. Then the next year he had the collarbone injury, which I watched the video of that. He literally got crushed by 2 defenders at the same, 2 huge defenders coming down on an angle. It was a football injury. It was a football
what are you gonna
bang, bang injury. What you going to do? And then he had, of course, the hamstring thing, which he kind of made worse himself. Even he admitted to us at the combine, like, look, I tried to play through it. I thought it was kind of like a cramp. Tried playing through it. He did play through it, and he wound up aggravating and making it worse. So when you kind of look at it and kind of like make excuses, like, yeah, maybe, and I think that's what kind of the Saints did. They were just kind of like, there's context to that. It's not like he's injury prone, even though he has been prone to injury. But it's just one of those things where you could come up with a concept, kind of like with Tyler Shuck, who had tons of injuries coming in, but they were all kind of separate in their own vacuum, their own injuries. Anyway, outside of that, what were your thoughts on him just overall, just as a prospect? Like what is his ceiling in your opinion? Like, as far as like, okay, here's what he can be starting off, but like if he hits all the benchmarks and gets better at some of his weaknesses, what is his ceiling in your opinion?
Can I say, because I haven't had a chance to say this anywhere else, and just because you mentioned the fact of like, well, it's not interesting, but it's just like got to get something. I just got to get it off my chest.
Get it off your chest, Matt.
Because you said the thing about how you're like talking yourself into it, the injury part of it, and look, that's what we all do, and I do this. You tell yourself a story about something. I don't know if you guys have, hopefully you haven't like kept up with almost like the weird internet culture war about Dejon Stribling, the 49ers wide receiver.
Gosh.
Isn't it so funny to think about, like, if the 49ers didn't take Dejon Stribling at 33rd overall, like none of those 49ers beat writers who are just like going to, and like 49ers, fan accounts and stuff, they would never tweet about this guy once in their entire life, but just because this team drafted him, like they got to go to war on the internet every day for like,
it's because it's a good fit. Anyway, that's a completely different.
I know, no, it is a good fit, and a lot of people just weren't paying attention to the fact that he was going to go on day 2. Like, I had heard it, everybody heard it. If you weren't locked in, if you weren't locked in on the draft, and you were just looking at like mock drafts and like the consensus board.
Like NFL people really liked him. Like NFL people really liked him.
Coaches really liked him. That was what I said on my show. It's like it's very obvious that this is a coach's favorite wide receiver, and that's why he's a late riser, because coaches, you guys know this, come to the process last. And that's why he's this like late riser, because the coaches are just watching now and they're like, oh yeah, this guy's awesome. So it's that felt very validating, hearing those reports from the 49ers beat writers carrying water for the pick. So that was nice. But anyways, my point, we'll get back to Jordyn Tyson here, because I actually didn't have a point on that. I just had to get it off my chest. I haven't said it anywhere else. So you're welcome.
We're going to clip that.
For wasting everyone's time there. But no, when it comes to Jordyn Tyson ceiling wise, I actually think that, sometimes comps are stupid and like it doesn't really matter, but I actually think his player comparison for me really kind of paints the career that he can have, and that's Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper and him are very, very similar in terms of size wise. They're in a similar bucket. They're very similar in ways that, like, if you lined up the 10 best routes of Amari Cooper in any season, you'd be like, oh my God, this is the best route runner in the NFL. But there was a lot of inconsistency in that within games, within stretches of seasons. That was always borne out in his reception perception data. And shoot, like anybody who had Amari Cooper in fantasy knew there was like ups and downs. Sometimes that's not always the case. Like the player doesn't own the volatile production. Sometimes it does. And I thought that was the case with Cooper. But the best years of Cooper's career, you could argue, as like the prime years of his career, came in Dallas after, at the very end of his Raiders career, he was, and I know this because I've talked to people that were with Cooper on that staff. They viewed him as like, oh, we took him in the 4th overall pick, top 5. Like, he has to be our X receiver, because this is back in 2015, 2016, where it's like your number 1 was your X. So they put him in this role, and it was very, very up and down. Right towards the end of his time in Oakland, Las Vegas, like I believe actually never made it to Las Vegas. So end of his time in Oakland, they started putting him in Z, and then when that carried over into Dallas, he had these awesome years as a guy that was off ball, moving between the flanker slot position, and that kind of helps, I think, get some of the inconsistencies out of his game and like really let him rip it on routes in the intermediate area. And I think Jordyn Tyson can probably be that type of player too. And like, you look at Amari Cooper's end of year stats at the end of his career, because he's retired now. You're like, damn, yeah, I would take that, like pretty much from a top 10 pick. I think you would take that every day of the week. I do just think there's going to be some ups and downs, some inconsistencies with a player like this. just because there are going to be moments where he gets pressed, and can he get better at that? Cooper definitely got better at that. Honestly, towards his time with Cleveland, he was really good as a press man beater, and finally was like kind of having his best seasons as an X receiver in the Browns offense, weirdly enough. Yeah, him and Flacco, man, on those like big play action routes. And that's another thing too, where like, and I think this is true of a guy like Tyson too, where, and Jerry Jeudy, who's like the extreme version of this archetype. He's like the Funhouse Mirrors version of this, like very exaggerated. But you know, Judy's another guy that he had a good year as the Z receiver in Cleveland, because they kind of had him stop. They didn't like enough already with the slot stuff where he's having these multiple breaking routes. He's taking forever to get open. It's like, congratulations, that's great on TikTok. Your quarterback is sacked now. So they had him just on these like one cut and go routes, and I think that's something that Jordyn Tyson can do as well. So I think ceiling wise, like, yeah, he could be an Amari Cooper type of player where he flirts with number one wide receiver status, or he's either like he's a good number one, or he's like an awesome number two. And I think that fits with the current collection of the Saints receivers, where they've got some, you know, useful players potentially down the depth chart. They have a guy in Chris Olave that I think complements Jordyn Tyson really well, because he's an awesome press man beater and a very reliable route runner. So yeah, I would say ceiling wise, like an Amari Cooper type of player is what he could be.
I think that comp makes a lot of sense. I remember you saying it. I remember you saying it on Twitter maybe like a couple of weeks before the draft, and I was like, oh, like that's good. You brought up Chris Olave, and I think the thing that just makes the Tyson pick so enticing, no pun intended, is just the way that they'll be able to complement each other and play off each other. When you're kind of visualizing it, how do you think in terms of like Kellen Moore, what he's wanting to do with Tyson, with Olave, in terms of dictating to defenses that he wasn't able to do? Because Ryan was just looking up like all 22 of the Saints last season, and he was just like, he was doing it yesterday, I think. He was just like, Jesus Christ. Like, it was like bracket Chris Olave, and then you had like Mason Tipton, just like Tipton and
Mason Tipton doing like the little the motion ghost orbit motion thing.
Yeah.
Running out is like, oh,
the love of the game routes. That was what Brandon Cooks was doing at the beginning of the year.
It sure was.
Yep. Sure was.
Yeah.
Love of the game, baby.
It's okay. So that's Bryce Lance now for the time being. Just use your speed. Just go.
For real. Get your cardio in. But I actually think that's what's really cool about now. They can have two like real credible threats doing that stuff. Like I want to see actually what in like this is a lot because Bryce Lance is a day 3 rookie. This might not be able to happen, you know, until 2027. So, you know, we might offend the Vele bros when we say this, but like if 3 receiver, I know, we'll be careful. If 3 receiver set, where you've got, you know, Bryce Lance as the isolated receiver on one side of the field, and he's that nominal on-ball X receiver. And then you've got either of Jordyn Tyson or Chris Olave as the on-ball player, and then the other guy's cutting across on that full-speed motion, pre-snap motion off the ball, and it just depends on when is the ball snapped. Is he in the slot or is he outside? And I think you can really, really just work those guys in different matchups too. Like, is it a pre-snap man look? If it's a pre-snap man look, we know Chris Olave is one of the best man coverage receivers in the NFL. In his first 3 seasons, he's been right around 75.8 to 76.3% success rate versus man coverage. Those were his first 3 seasons, not even just this past year, which was definitely the best year of his NFL career. Yep. So he's somebody, because he was like a pro-level route runner coming to the NFL, also a very fast and explosive player. Like, you can trust him to, even though he's the smaller receiver, he's the better press man beater, because he's going to be able to reliably release into the routes, get open. So there's a lot there for him. And then for Tyson, if it's a zone coverage look, you know, maybe he's your primary, because as I mentioned, he's the best zone beater in this class. And I also think too, just working those guys on combination routes where one guy's breaking inside, one guy's breaking outside.
Exactly.
And this is the thing that we probably talked about this on the last episode that really struck me about Tyler Shuck. he was so good, and stats wise was excellent on outbreaking routes on out routes in particular last year. Had like a 77% or 72% completion rate on out routes, if I remember off the top of my head, routes and flat routes, and that was Jordyn Tyson's best routes too. So if you can get Olave breaking over the middle of the field, and I think that Shuck and him had a lot of connection and chemistry on those in breaking routes, like dig routes over the middle of the field.
Oh yeah.
And then you think about Tyson working on combination out routes. Now we're talking about like a very, very interesting duo that is tough to cover when those guys are lined up on the same side of the field.
Exactly. And then you think about, Shuck was also really good in the intermediate middle of the field. Like, I want to say he had like the fifth highest EPA in the league, over his time that he played, for air yards between 9 and 19 yards or whatever over the field. It was really impressive. Him and Villet really cooked in that area too. Just kind of over the middle, on the sideline and stuff like that. One area that Shuck really needs to improve at was downfield. And I'm saying he needs to improve. It wasn't really like him, but it's just who we had. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't really have the guys to get downfield.
No.
He played with Shaheed for like he played like one game with Shaheed, and that was pretty much it. I mean, he hit a couple shots to Chris Olave, a couple to Villet, but they really couldn't really get the deep ball going. So I'm wondering, like, what's Tyson's deep ball game like? And, obviously we're going to talk about Bryce Lanes also when it comes to the deep ball. What do you think they can bring to that dimension they can bring to the Saints?
Yeah, so the stat I mentioned earlier, Tyler Shuck on out routes and flat routes, 73% completion rate, 438 yards in his, just very brief action last year. So I think that completion rate really shows you that he can drive, and this is what I really like about him, is that he can drive the ball deep and outside the numbers.
Yeah.
Like can throw from the far hash to the field accurately, on time, in rhythm. We just didn't have a lot of guys to work in that way last year. Now, I don't think Tyson is a guy that you want to line up and run like go routes against press man coverage. I do think he struggles to release and stack guys. We'll never know what his 40 time is. And that is always tough, right? Like you can say like, oh, I don't care. I've seen it in the games. And for the most part, I don't really care. But then every now and again, like I kind of wish I knew what Corey Davis's 40 time was. We never got any like pre-draft testing on him, and he was a receiver from Western Michigan that went 5th overall. Like I kind of wish we knew. I wish I knew what Marvin Harrison Jr.'s 40 time was, even though I didn't think I would care about it. But like here, 2 years later, I wish I knew.
Do we care what Jeremiah Smith's 40 time is next season?
We'll never know. We're never going to find out.
We'll never find out.
We'll never find out.
No clue.
You can't. I mean, they can't torture that information out of you. That is a state secret. If it's unless it's like a 4.33. I mean, then go out and run it and let us know. But yeah, if he doesn't run one, nobody will ever know. But anyways, yeah. So I think with a guy like Tyson, we'll never know what his 40 time is. But I do think like straight line speed wise is not really his expertise. He's more of like a glider, which by the way is totally fine. You look at the top receivers in area, like the most productive receivers on 20+ air yard throws last year, outside receivers, guys who took 63+% of their snaps outside, their average 40 time is like a 4.49. Like it doesn't really matter. But
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's all about stacking and release and stacking and
deception within your routes, which I do think Tyson on a particular set of routes, like there is definitely like we're slants and sometimes like stop routes and curls. He does a little bit too much dancing that again looks really good on social media, but it's like just get into it. But when you pull up his route chart, the out routes and the dig routes are his two best routes, and that's because it's just one cut, explode. And JSN last year was so productive on those two routes because he is the best wide receiver in the NFL. Like, average 40 time for him is probably like a 4.52, I think was at his pro day. Maybe if you're generous, 4.48. So again, in that same sort of range. But he's the best liar at the wide receiver position in the NFL right now. Just would tell you one thing with his head, does another. And I think Tyson has the making of that. So when we're talking about explosive plays, we think about it as, these go routes, which I don't think is like the strength necessarily. He's not bad, but I don't think it's like the strength of Tyson's game. Right. Like you're looking at the chart here, it's like average, but where you can create a lot of explosive plays are on those deep out routes, dig routes, post routes. over routes. He can create a lot of those, especially if he gets free releases.
Yo, what up, Wolf? What are you looking at?
Man, I'm checking out this website. This site is cheeks, bro.
In the 21st century? How do you have a crappy website? Couldn't be me.
They need to hit up our guy Bijan with Precious Works. Precious Works offers to not only build you a website that's tailored to you and your customers' needs, but also to continue to manage and maintain it so you can focus on your business. Don't have much time? Precious Works is just what you need. No out-of-the-box stuff like Squarespace or Wix. Precious Works will create a site for you. You won't have to worry about plugin updates, security, or things like that because Precious Works will maintain all of that and be available to you 24/7. Bijan set up Saints Block Party Podcast website for us a few years ago and hit it out the park. He also keeps it up to date and helps us anytime we want to add something new like a form or the prospect matching tool that we did for the NFL draft. It's like having your own personal developer just a text or a call away. Precious Works has worked with everyone from small businesses to large firms, so no job is too big or too small. If you're in the need of a website or you currently have one, but you want to upgrade it, give Bijan a holler at Precious Works. You can get with him at Bijan at Precious Works, BIJON at precious.works, or go to precious.works for his website. Make sure to tell him Saints Block Party sent you.
It's going to be...
If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A.S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
It's going to be one interesting to see just how all the pieces fit. One of the things that I think Ryan and I were just so happy about with the adding of Tyson, and we'll get into Lance in a little bit, is now like everyone kind of like in the wide receiver room kind of like falls into their role of where they should be. Like you have Olave is obviously ingrained as like the one. Tyson comes in immediately. He's seen as like the two, and then like Belay can just be your wide receiver 3, which is that's how he kind of profiles. So he doesn't have to go out there and be like a wide receiver 2 for a season. And so it was just fascinating to see the Tyson pick happen in round 1. Then they added Miller from Georgia in round 2, and Ryan and I were just like, okay, cool, like we got our juice, we're good. Then they went Oscar Depp, which completely like blew us away. Like in round 3, we were like, what the hell? And then after that, they followed that the next day with Bryce Lance. Like it was the Vince McMahon just like meme of just you couldn't. It just didn't make any sense to us. Because Lance is so fascinating from like an athletic profile. And I watched your piece you did with James, like the whole 22-minute episode of what Lance is going to be, particularly in the NFL. But for people who didn't dig into Bryce Lance is all 22 from North Dakota State, which we can't even we might have to ask you if you could help us get in it because we were looking for is like it doesn't exist. It does not exist. Like it's not up there. But just what was just your impressions of just Lance as a prospect, but more importantly, how he kind of fits into this wide receiver room that is now becoming pretty crowded.
Yeah, it is. And I actually think the Oscar Delp pick is instructive here too, and like worth bringing up in this because you mentioned it's like I think the Delp thing was pretty surprising because if you look at this team last year, they were so almost over-indexed on 3 receiver sets. They had 3+ receivers on the field on 67.8% of their snaps, which was third most in the NFL. And they were one of the few teams that skewed the opposite way of the trend, whereas like the entire NFL is going towards more heavier personnel packages, you know, mostly 2 to 3 tight ends on the field, but even like a fullback, stuff like that. They had a 34 percentage point increase in plays with 3 receivers plus on the field, which is again, I know I tweeted this out. I should have sent it to you guys before the show, but it's like they're so far on the other end of like teams that skewed into those spread concepts, and that's mostly because that is what Kellen Moore wants to do. But also, they had Kubiak the year before, and he's more of that heavier personnel team. Yep. But at the same time, I think you want to be able to go multiple. And that's what's really cool about the Delp and the Lance pick, because last year they pretty much didn't have a tight end who allowed them to get into 12 personnel. Really, because you want none. And that's another thing too. And I got radicalized in this when I was doing shows with Austin Eckler a few years ago, watching a lot of Chargers football games. And the thing that always stood out to me was like, yeah, Austin was this like incredible fantasy back, was putting up monster numbers, but the run game sucked. Like, and it wasn't, and he was a good back, but they were like, again, putting up monster numbers, and they were like 32nd in rushing success rate, which was just crazy to like kind of think about that. And watching that team, I was like, these tight ends, no disrespect, but like this is bad stuff. Like they cannot block a soul. And it was like the canary in the coal mine of their run game. And I think if you're the Saints, you didn't have a consistently good ground game last year. You invested money in Travis Achan. You invest money in the offensive line. Like that's going to help you be multiple in your run game, marry your run in your pass game. So I like that, but I also like them still saying like, yeah, when it comes time to spread the field and do all this cool wide receiver motion stuff, we do need a body on the outside, to maybe be sacrificial at times, the sacrificial X receiver, open it up for your teammates, stretch the defense out. But when you want to throw a bucket to somebody on go routes, like Bryce Lance definitely has those skill sets. So I love them taking both of those guys, and specifically Bryce Lance. Like I kind of called him the arbitrage Chris Brazzell in this draft, in that both of these guys had, some red flags just on the kind of 30,000 foot view of their profile. For Brazzell, and I'm talking about on field, there's some off field stuff with Brazzell, whatever, but like on the field, Brazzell's coming from this Looney Tunes Tennessee offense. He only plays on one side of the field, and obviously for Bryce Lance, he's playing in North Dakota State. Not a high level of competition there, and they both like profile so similarly from a reception perception standpoint. Their overall success rate metrics are like within striking distance of each other. Obviously, one of them is playing in the SEC, one of them is playing in North Dakota State, but Bryce Lance definitely shows an ability to rip it downfield. I mean, you're seeing it on the chart right now. Like his success rate on 9 routes is very impressive. Post routes, corner routes, like he can absolutely get downfield, builds up strides well. He's got again, if you guys are able to watch him, I'd wonder if you see the same thing. He's got like a funny style of running routes where he almost like he's got his arms out and like almost kind of wobbles into it and like leans into his routes at times. I thought he got better about that because he definitely tips off his routes when he's doing that stuff. But I got better about that throughout the course of his college career. So I really like Bryce Lance as like I would have said like late round 3, early round 4 type. So I like where they got him, and he makes a lot of sense to kind of complete that room in a theoretical standpoint.
It's interesting, man. And then when you just start to look at everything, like the whole offseason as a whole, obviously Kellen Moore agreed with us. Like he agreed with me and Adam because we looked at the offense, the tight end blocking was horrendous. It was awful in the run game. It was awful in the pass game. Juwan Johnson had almost 1,000 yards as a pass catcher, but he's a pass catcher tight end. That's just what he is.
He's a tight, as Nate Tice has been calling it. He's a Tino, a tight end in name only. Like, you know,
exactly.
Yes,
exactly. But then they go, okay, they sign Travis Etienne, they sign Noah Fant, they sign David Edwards at guard, which was a huge hole at the left guard spot. They draft Tyson, they draft Lance, they address kick returner. Obviously, Kellen Moore said, man, we need juice. Like, we need juice on this team. Because honestly, the Saints were just kind of a struggle to watch. Like, unless you sickos like me and Adam, it's just a struggle to watch, man. Like, they barely could score 20 points. Even in wins, they barely could get up to like 18 points. It was just tough to watch. It was hard. Like, offense was so hard to make happen. Like, just scoring points. I wanted to talk to you about red zone, though. Where are you as far as like with red zone offense with like somebody like Tyson, Lance? Like, what can they bring to the table? Because I feel like that's somewhere in the Saints. That's a dimension that's still missing.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I would just say I enjoyed watching this Saints offense on film because I'm a scheme sicko. Like
you're a sicko. Like you're a sicko.
Exactly. Exactly. But it was fun. It like honestly became a running bit on my fantasy show where I was like, like the Saints offense they're kind of doing some cool stuff. Like, it's actually fun to watch. Like, my producer was like, you have to stop talking about this. Nobody is finding, like, this is a fantasy football show. Nobody is finding any value in the Saints offense. Nobody is listening to these segments.
I was listening to a Matt.
This was my audience. Like,
exactly.
Here it is.
I like listening to like Greg Cosell. He'll be on like Ross Tucker podcast. And I think one of the episodes, Ross Tucker was asking Cosell about the Saints. He was like, "Look, Ross, I just haven't watched the Saints. I haven't watched them, so I can't speak on them." I was like, "Damn, man."
Ross, even got Cosell like even Cosell's like, I'm watching more film than anybody, but I got a line somewhere. That's so funny. Well, see, and this also, like, I get into this stuff when I'm like invested in a receiver, and like I love Chris Olave, so I'm like, I gotta check in on what are they doing with Olave, and like things are looking good. But you know what? It ended up paying off because at the end of the year, Chris Olave was like one of the fantasy league winners because this offense is creatively deploying their players. So, and they just had to get a quarterback. Damn right it was. Let's never let him forget, boys. Let's never let him forget.
I know his agent letting Mickey Loomis forget in those contract negotiations.
Good. Yes. Let's get Chris his money. But no, yeah, like, I think that when you just look at this team, I think critical down and distance situations are where they do need to get better. So that's obviously third down in the red zone. You mentioned this, like in scoring areas. And I always think that we get into this thing where it's like, well, we need big receivers in the red zone. And that definitely helps. But again, you also need like guys who can win in tight, confined spaces. Yeah, and exactly. I think being able to, weaponize these two guys on the same side of the field, Olave and Tyson, that will help. Especially if we're talking about the inside, outside, in-breaking, out-breaking combo routes. You see this a lot. Like the best thing that can happen to a quarterback in the red zone is two guys go with the in-cut receiver and that, out-cut receiver is just wide ass open. And you see that a lot in these well-designed offense. I was watching the Bears the other day for charting Luther Burden, and like they got to play like that for him, and it's just like it's that can happen, and you have multiple credible pass catchers who can operate on different route concepts. So that's part of it too. But also being able to get into these heavier personnel packages, that's when you really feel it, being able to have a tight end like Delp on the field, that's going to help a lot there. So even beyond like the receivers and stuff, you do need to have your receivers be able to come in and like mix it up in the run blocking game. I don't know. That's where the Vele bros maybe can step back in here and remind us that he's an important player for this team. Because I do think if we're talking about like power slot work, he's probably the best candidate on the roster. And actually, I'm joking about the Vele bros, but I mean, I really do appreciate a lot about Vele's game is that like power slot.
too. Like we like Vele,
Definitely.
But it's just like, let's just calm it down a bit. You know what I mean?
Let's just not it's the whole thing that we said before, like, let's not rely on like, what if this, what if that?
Yes.
Because now you look at this wide receiver room and you're like, oh man, like, how are we going to get snaps for everybody? I mean, that's what you want. You want that. You want like, oh man, what if we get like what if we get halfway through Bryce Lance's rookie year and he has like 10 targets because Vele has played so well, or like, Vele hasn't played so well. At least we have this 4th round rookie we could try out. Like, let's see if Jalen Polk, in the fishing chemistry carried over to the field. You know, like, let's see what happens. So that's what you want. You don't want to like go into the season with hopes and wishes. You want contingency plans, and they have plenty of that right now.
They do, and I think we might have to pour one out for Mason Tipton. I think his time with the team is probably ending very, very soon. Mm-hmm. But the Jalen Polk thing is still interesting because Ryan alluded to this, like that final spot on this team for wide receiver is going to be very interesting, and probably boils down to like special teams like that. Because if you like Jalen Polk is like talented, yes. Has he worked out in the NFL? No, not yet. And that's some of that being situation and some of that being on him. But like, he was a 2nd round pick, and it's like, like there's something there. But now just the fact that each receiver brings a little something different to the team and what their role is, and they're kind of more defined and clarified, I think is very important. Just getting back to Lance real quick. I talked about Ryan with this. I don't know if it was on the podcast or just in text messages, but I just said, kind of going back to like Sean Payton Saints, but still when they drafted Robert Meacham from Tennessee in 2007, Jesus Christ, I'm sick. Some of what he started out to being is like he was extremely fast wide receiver, and he kind of started off like opening things up for the rest of the wide receivers, running a lot of like deep post routes, and everything kind of opened up underneath that. I do wonder if that's potentially how they maybe start using Lance like initially, and then kind of sprinkle in like actual like, okay, you're more than just like our open up guy, like you can actually do some things. But that's kind of just like, how I just initially like envisioned Lance's role maybe initially, because he is having a big jump in competition.
Yeah, this is the sacrificial X receiver theory, right? Mm-hmm. Is like you get out there and yeah, you're going to open things up for your teammates. You're that big body guy, and that's how we get to do, because of the rules of the sport. 2 eligible receivers have to be on ball at the beginning of a snap. So in order to be able to do all that fun stuff that we were talking about, where like Chris Olave and Jordyn Tyson are lined up right next to each other, and there's all this motion, and who's the Z and who's the slot at the snap of the ball. Like, is one of these guys full speed motion running that for the love of the game route, but actually that's an eligible target because it's Jordyn Tyson or Chris Olave. Now, in order to do all that, you do need a guy to line up on the boundary on ball, and that's a part of that. And I think about a guy like Alec Pierce. I was like obsessed with talking about Pierce during this draft cycle, because I think the thing that was so critically misunderstood about Pierce's game in his both his prospect profile and his early career charting for reception perception, the guy, even though he was an incomplete player, he only really ran like 3 routes, but he ran those 3 routes really well, and he was just good enough against man press coverage to never lose his job. Even they drafted like A.D. Mitchell probably to replace him, and he kept that at bay. Mitchell obviously made his own mistakes, of course, too, but quite literally made mistakes on the field. But Pierce was able to keep that at bay because he was a credible man press beater to just stay on the field for 4 years. And then by his 4th year, he had added more to his plate. He was doing more than just running post, go, and slant and like quick little outs and stuff like that. Then he was running these more deeper in-breaking intermediate routes, more of that full field stuff, more curls and stop routes and things of that nature. And I think for these guys like Lance, to a degree, on guys that went on day 2, your Malachi Fields or your Chris Bell, even Chris Brazel, like you got to be good enough early on to just hang on to the field and stay on the field, so that you're able to develop on the job, because the best way to improve is to play. The best way to just get those live reps and everything. And, I think Lance against man coverage, 67.4%. It's not like an incredible mark, but it's solid enough. And he's so good on those deep routes that, he can be the sacrificial receiver early on and hopefully go from there and be more of a full field threat by year 3 or 4.
It's interesting. Kind of off topic from the Saints. I was listening to one of the episodes you put out recently. You were talking about the Panthers with Chris Brazel, and you were talking about how the Panthers like are kind of built to go the other way, the way the league is going, as far as like spreading them out, and kind of like attacking. And Adam brought up the same thing when we were talking to Cody Alexander a couple of days ago on the podcast on like how will offenses kind of react to this trend? How would defenses react, counter react to the trends? And it seems like the Panthers are built interestingly, with these big wide receivers, and you got Bryce Lance. He's just small, a guy that kind of excels in the spread, with things all spread out. It makes me wonder, like, what are they cooking up? Or is it just kind of like this just happens to be how their team is built, with no plan to it?
I think there might, I'm guessing that there's a plan here, because if you look at Bryce Young, like back in 2024, when they were in empty, so nobody else in the backfield, just full spread it out, he was 11.2 yards per completion in 2024 out of empty, 7.3 adjusted yards per attempt. And on all other formations, like it's just not nearly as good. Like it was a very efficient play. Bryce Young being an empty, it's the most efficient stuff in his career that they did that in 2024. And he had 96 attempts out of empty in 2024. Remember, he was benched during that season. He was benched during that year. Last season, as a full year starter, except for one game, 88 pass attempts out of empty, and the efficiency definitely went down. I think there's a lot of reasons for the efficiency stuff, but just again, that's a true lack of volume of it. They went away from it, even though it was so efficient in 2024. Right. I think they're looking back at that and thinking like, can we get back to that? Can we get back to more spread out? And I just think that's probably the way Bryce Young plays, the best, from the gun when it's spread out. And he can be kind of a point guard. Like you don't necessarily have. Yeah, exactly. You don't have like and he can see it. Get some of the bodies out of the way.
Out of his way. Yeah.
And yeah, quite literally. It helps to have those big ass receivers down the field when you're a smaller guy. And they have a huge receiver room. I mean, Tetero McMillan, Jalen Coker. Coker's listed like 6'3", over 215 pounds. I've heard he's closer more to like 6'1", 200.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think he's quite that big, but he's still a big guy. He's more built like Chris Godwin than his listed weight. Is the player I think he compares best to. Xavier Legette is a massive guy. Chris Brazzell, 6'4", 200 pounds. And then little Jimmy Horn Jr. completes the room. But you know what? Jimmy Horn Jr. was running a lot of those for the love of the game routes last year. He's creating a lot of leverage for Tetero McMillan. So, I do wonder if they end up becoming one of these offenses where they don't have like a true – I think T-Mac in time, he's not there yet, but I think in time he could be a one. But they might have more of like we spread and shred to all these eligible receivers and they go away from this like heavy personnel package trend. And it'll be interesting to see if that works out for them because on paper right now, even Jatavian Sanders is another guy that's like a light tight end. Tommy Tremble is a smaller tight. Like they don't have really. Mitchell Evans is definitely their best like inline presence. They don't really have the tight end room to be one of these crazy 12, 13 personnel package teams. So they might be a team that was kind of my theory was that they're going to skew a little bit away from the trend and we'll see if that works out for them.
The last one I had, this is kind of like off the wall and kind of just me just thinking hypothetical, but last year had Tetero had been there at 9, the Saints would have turned that pick in and he would have been the pick even over Kelvin Banks. And I'm just wondering, just trying to see if there's a trend of how did McMillan's profile kind of look compared to Jordyn Tyson's, just for funsies.
They're both like super smooth players if I'm thinking about how they're similar. But I do think they're really, really different. Tetero McMillan, like who's going to end up being better? I think that, it's up for debate. Everything like, I know you're not asking that, but it's like, just in terms of their optimal deployment, like I think T-Mac is a guy that you can go, and this is quite literally what they did. Ask him to go out and be like big boy X receiver number 1 right away. And to mixed results, to be fair, I know he was statistically really, really good, super productive on a per route basis, and he won freaking offensive rookie of the year as he should have. But I mean, it's still like sometimes there were games where he would get routed out of it and whatever. But that's going to happen when you're a rookie and you're playing 80% outside on the line of scrimmage. The good thing I don't think Tyson could do that. I don't think he will have to do that in this offense. So I think that would have been like a really different outcome and a really different receiver room had they added T-Mac as opposed to Jordyn Tyson. Because if you look at McMillan last year, he was right there at like 70%, 70.4% success rate versus man, 81% success rate versus zone, 73.1% against press. And like that's the big difference between him and Tyson, is that I think McMillan showed you better like stuff against press coverage, in tight coverage, but Tyson is a significantly, I think, more comfortable zone beater probably than T-Mac is at this point.
Which makes sense.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. I guess my last one is, how far do you think this Saints offense can go if everything works out? If Tyson stays healthy, some of the young guns come along. Shuck is actually a good quarterback, and he continues to show growth. Where do you think the offense can go? I'm not worried about wins and all that stuff, but just offensively, can Kellen kind of take it to another level?
I think they could push for a top 15 offense. I think right around there would be something good to shoot for, and maybe it feels again a little bit better by the end of the year. And obviously this means that Shuck has taken another step. I thought he was really promising last year. We assume he's taking another step this year. Dangerous assumption, but in this world, that's what we're assuming. We're assuming the run game is better because they're more multiple from a personnel standpoint. The offensive line is better. Like everything looks better on paper. Right. Obviously, the top two receivers have to stay healthy, and it all has to come together. But I think they could push for a top. I think they could push for a top 15 offense this year. If not one of those teams that's like worse in the first half, better in the second half, which again, very similar to what they were last year.
Hashtag on paper. We're back to there.
We're back to on paper.
back to on paper. But at least the on paper is promising and exciting. And like I told Ryan, I said it would be the most hilarious thing and Saints thing ever is like the draft that they added so much juice, like ends up being like one of the worst draft classes. But like in the moment, we were just ecstatic about it. Like wouldn't that be
got
like
the memories?
We do. But all that said, at least at the very least, like at least offensively, it looks like the offense will be fun. Like I don't know like what it's gonna mean in terms of wins and losses, but hopefully it ends up being fun. And another thing that I feel like we did, like I haven't even talked about until like recently, is that with adding Oscar Dupp and adding Noah Fant, like one of the things that Kellen did bring up and use later in the season with Shuck is that Shuck's running ability and like those quarterback powers and those kind of quarterback counters and things like that. And those when you have tight ends that can block and block well or willing to block at the very least really can help spring that up, because that's a thing that Kellen was utilizing towards the end of the season. But all that to say, Matt, what a fantastic episode. Thank you for coming on and joining us. And we actually have like 2 wide receivers to look forward to for like the rookie at the end when you do your write-ups.
That's right.
What is like?
Finally, the Saints will get since 2022, with 2022, there'll be 2 players in the rookie report. Well, we'll see about Bryce Lance if he plays enough. Definitely, there will definitely be one, provided he plays at least 4 games. Jordyn Tyson will be charted for the reception perception mid-season rookie report. So thank God, boys. Like I said, we did it. We made it.
We made it. If you are listening to this and you are still not in the know, make sure you check out Reception Perception and become a member of receptionperception.com. Our podcast we love its great content. Also check Matt out on Yahoo Football Fantasy Forecast, or no, football, is it Football Forecast? Fantasy Forecast?
Fantasy Forecast. It's confusing. The name of the show has changed like 5 times, so I'm like not really that invested.
Just do what I do. I go on YouTube and I type Matt Harmon.
There you go. Then you'll get all the important stuff.
All of it. But thank you so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it. And to our listeners and viewers, we appreciate y'all tuning in. And with that, we are out.
Peace.